name is Mark Anthony Strum. I was raised in a township when I was a kid. It was very rural. It wasn't grown up whatsoever. And I went to school there, and that's where I had this encounter, which has affected me most of my life. And I'm 61 now, and it still bothers me. Very unnerving even to this day. Once this happens to anybody, you're going to realize you're not the top of the food chain. And it will affect you in ways you've never dreamed. But I hope this reaches out and touches other people, that they're just aware and they don't have their heads buried in the sand like most people do. There's more out there than meets the eye. And once you become aware of it, it's like, actually I say I had a 98 Jeep, and everywhere I looked I saw a 98 Jeep. If you're aware of it, you can at least stay clear of it. And that's all I have to say about that.
In the pre-interview, we talked about how, in a way, it's a curse that you had that encounter that you had when you were 10. But I also mentioned the fact that maybe it is a godsend that you had it in another way. Now that you know that they're out there because of that encounter you had, in a way that does give you an advantage, because you know to look out for them, you know not to do certain things that people who have no clue that they're out there wouldn't even know about.
Absolutely. If I go out in the woods or something, I will not wear bright clothes, because that's like wearing a meal ticket sign on me. And if it's thick underbrush that it's very hard to move through, I will not go in it. Because if you can't see 3 or 4 feet in front of you, or you don't know what's creeping up behind you, you stay out of thick underbrush or thick pine trees or whatnot, because you don't know what's below it. Something could be in the trees. You don't know. Drop down on top of you. You always have to keep a clear view all the way around you and be aware of your surroundings. If you're not aware of your surroundings and you're focused on, oh, look at the birdies, well, you're looking for trouble. You could drop into a ditch, or something could jump up on top of you, walk into a bear, or walk into one of these things. And you don't want to walk into one of these things, I'm telling you. Because your pants will get wet real quick, and you won't know what to do. Because you'll jump 2 feet up, 2 feet sideways, and probably leave brown streaks for the rest of your life. You have to be aware of your surroundings. I don't care if you're in a suburban neighborhood and there's woods near you. You have to be aware of what's in your woods and look around in the tall grass. Just be aware. You don't have to be afraid, but be aware. That's even walking down the street at night. Listen, stop, look. Listen to the animals. If everything goes quiet, you don't hear any noise from anything, something's going on. That's a good indicator. I've heard that a couple times. The hackles in the back of my head stood up, and I was gone. Because when things get quiet, something's going on. You can usually feel, if you've ever been into a place, you feel like somebody's staring at you, you turn around and there's somebody staring at you. That's another indicator. Use your intuition. But don't go out there and walk around like, oh, nothing's going to happen. Anything can happen, especially when you're out in the woods. Anything. But you have to take notice of your surroundings.
I mentioned to you in the pre-interview that not long ago, a lady in Cincinnati saw a dog man within the city limits. If she can see a dog man within the city limits of a city that large, then where can't they go? When you were a kid, before you had that encounter at the age of 10, what kind of things did you enjoy doing that you weren't able to do after you had that encounter?
Playing army men, going down the woods, shooting BB guns, going out at night, roaming around the neighborhood, playing ninjas, sneaking up on people, scaring people. But after that happened, I was scared to go out at night, because when it started getting dusk, I was in the house, because I was afraid something's going to be sneaking up on me as I'm sneaking up on somebody else. And it's affected me even to this day after 50 years. I don't like going out at night when it's dark or moonless, because I don't know what's around me, and I can't hear like those things can hear, and I cannot see like they can do, and I cannot move like they do. I'm like a clumsy baby out in the woods, as most of us are. We don't have the senses they do. They could be right next to you. And for some reason, I get the feeling they just love to scare the out of us. And they can do it and get away with it. And I don't want to take it to the next level. I don't want to wind up being a chew toy for something like this. It scares the heck out of me because I am aware of it and I know they're there. I might see another one, who knows? But I don't want to put myself in the position to do that. I got gray hair already. I don't want any more gray hair because of these things. You know, I just want to be aware. I've lost a lot of things. I will not go out to federal parks and camp out or anything, especially in a tent. That thing comes along with a claw, it slice that tent open, drag my butt out, and I'm gone. You know, so when I go out somewhere, if I'm going out somewhere in the country or something, I got a shotgun in the back trunk, an assault shotgun with lead slugs and buckshot and silver slugs. You name it, it's in there. And I'm locked and loaded. And if I start feeling something funky, I'm out of there. But I won't go alone. I will not go camping alone. Because you can just disappear and nobody knows, oh, what happened to him? Well, here's all his gear, but where's he at? Oh, we don't know. Because I don't put anything past these creatures, these dogmen, whatever you want to call them, whatever they are. They know the woods better than we do. That's their habitat. Now, when I was a kid and this thing came to where I lived, it was pretty rural. But I think as we expand outward into their habitat, they're getting more and more aggressive coming into our habitat because we're messing with their food supply. How long is it going to be before we become their food supply? As they're coming into cities and stuff, you have a lot of darkened alleyways, a lot of darkened places for them to hide during the daytime and hold up. In Cincinnati, walking down a darkened street at night, subway, alleyway, who knows? They could be hiding there. And they come out, and you could be at the right place at the wrong time. And you don't hear many people talking about them because, oh, you're nuts, you're crazy. I heard that all the time when I was a kid. I tried to tell that. And my father, when my parents came home, I was home alone when this happened to me. My parents come home, my mother gave me because I had a .22 rifle locked and loaded. A lot of good .22 rifles do, but I was a kid. My father just kind of looked at me like, okay, what can I say? These things are nothing to toy with. I never heard of a dogman in 65. And it took years and years till the internet, till I started figuring it out. I just thought it was me. Or, oh, you saw a werewolf. Oh, what's a werewolf? I don't know. These things ain't werewolves. They're something else. But they're smart. They're just as intelligent as we are. I don't want to meet any more. And I hope to God none of you ever meet one. But what I want you to do is just be aware. If they're in the cities, they're coming in the cities, you better be aware. Stay to lighted areas. They seem not to like light. They don't like being seen. That's what gets them PO'd. I don't want to be scared anymore. I've been scared enough. It's affected my life in a very negative way. But I'm coming out of it. I'm starting to understand and control that fear into a respect of what they are. I'm trying to figure out what they are. If I understand the nature of everything, then I understand the thing. So I'm trying to study them and figure them out. What they are, where they come from. I don't know. I just know they're real.
I'm not sure if it's more unnerving, the idea of running into one of these things in an urban environment, walking down an alley, or some other place like that in the city at night, than being out in the dark woods and running into one. The idea of that is just so over the top. Having said that, Mark, let's get into this encounter that you had. Please tell us why you were at the location of your encounter, and also give us every last detail that comes to mind.
Well, it was approximately 1965 when I go back. I was still in grade school. I was approximately 10. My parents went off shopping, and you know, kids being kids, 10 years old. I don't want to go home. I'm going to go with you. I'm a big boy. So they left me home. And I'm watching TV, doing kid stuff, playing with my G.I. Joe dolls, which was a big thing at the time. And I had the idiot box on watching TV, and I'm just sitting there minding my own business. It's dark out, maybe about 8, 9 o'clock at night. And it's quiet, so I'm just sitting in the living room. Well, I live in the trailer, and I'm in the living room, this combination with kitchen. You go down the hallway, and there's one bedroom, 2 bedrooms, and then the master bedroom. There's a bathroom way before that, but anyway, I'm sitting there in the living room. I hear this rapping coming from the back bedroom on the window. And I ignore it for a little bit, and I hear it again. All right, what the heck is this? So I get up out of the chair that I'm spinning, and I walk down the hallway, and the curtains are drawn. And I hear a rap again. I open the curtains, and this thing is looking at me. And it looked like a giant wolf. I mean, I didn't know what to do. And it had like a grayish black fur. It was enormous. The head was enormous. The teeth, I'll never forget the teeth. They were enormous, and they were a whitish color that went up to a yellowish color, stained yellowish. Kind of like a tartar, like they've been used a lot, like tartar color. And it had like a pinkish tongue, and I looked at the eyes, and they were bright red. And oh man! And the thing just let out this low growl, and it hit me, and it's like, I didn't know what to do. I was frozen. And I looked at it, and it had ears that shot up on either side of his head that looked like a timber wolf. And on top of each ear, there was 3 hairs. But it felt like it hated me. For some reason, it hated me. It was full of malice. Like, if it wanted to kill me, it was going to kill me. And it just stared at me and stared at me and stared at me. And I looked down, and the thing was standing up. It wasn't leaning, it was standing up. And it pulled his head back like it was going to smash the glass with his snout. And I took off running. That fast, I bolted. We had rolling doors in the bedroom. I rolled the door in the bedroom. Now I think about it, it's funny. It kind of went through that trailer like a Cracker Jack box, went through that door like cardboard. I ran down, went in my bedroom, grabbed a .22 rifle. I had a Remington tubular loaded it up with .22s, ran down, jumped in the chair, and just sat there, frozen. I wouldn't look out the windows. I was scared to death of looking at any windows around me. Probably looking at me, I don't know. But I just stared at the wall. I wasn't paying attention to TV. I wasn't doing anything. Then after a while, my parents came in. My mother was looking at me like, "What are you doing with a gun?" I saw kids stumbling around. I thought, and she gave me a royal about having a gun. Well, I said something to my father. He didn't say anything. So, okay. I didn't sleep all that night. Man, this thing scared me. I'll never forget it. It's burned into me. But I felt that it took something from me. I feel like I'm linked to it. Like it somehow did something that I'm linked to it that, how can I explain it? It could have tore me up if it wanted to. But it didn't for some reason. He let me for some reason, but it took something from me. But anyway, the next morning I went up the street to, at that time, my best buddy, Bobby. I said, "Bobby, you got to see this." Well, it had rained that night. And he come down and, "Look at the tracks. Holy Christmas." And they were bigger than my hands put together, standing at the window. And this thing must have been 8 foot tall to look in that window, because this trailer was up on stilt things, with cinder blocks. And to look halfway through, it must have been 8 foot. So we followed the tracks down towards the woods. And all of a sudden, bing, they stopped. And we're looking around where there's trees around us. So we never paid it no mind. Maybe it jumped in a tree or something. I don't know. But every time I went down in those woods, the hackles on the back of my head would stand up, and I was gone. And at nighttime, you would never catch me down there. It was like, for some reason, something was down there. And then years later, I came back to that place. It was called Trench's Woods. I still feel like there was something watching me, and I would never go out in those woods at night. And even at night when I lived there, I would never go out in the backyard at night. And I was grown then. And even to this day, at 60 years old, I will not go outside at night in a rural area without having some kind of firearm on me. But that thing was the biggest wolf thing I've ever seen in my life. And it could have just chewed me in half. It was gigantic. And it was a monster dog. And the head on it was the biggest thing I've ever seen in my life. It makes a German Shepherd or a normal timber wolf look like a pup. And it was just the feeling of it that it radiated was so evil. It was like it was saying to me, I'm the king of the mountain and you're nothing. Stay away from me, or I'll hurt you. And to this day, it has affected me, so I'm very well aware of my surroundings at all times. And if you're traveling at night in cars, stay away from real dark wooded areas. Be very aware. Because these things are big enough to turn your car over, do whatever they want to do. And I get the feeling that they're just like people. You have good, you have bad. You got some that just like to tear your butt up. They're just like people. But you just don't know what they are or what their intent is. And I don't trust them. But see, go the other direction, please. Well, that's about all I can say about the darn thing.
What shape did the footprints have, Mark? Were they round or more hominid in shape?
Oh, they were round. They looked like a giant wolf print. They were bigger than both my little hands together. I mean, they were enormous. Then they had claws on them, too. You could see the claws. And they were really spaced far apart, like it walked on 2 legs. They weren't like a dog walk. They had a stride to them.
You're saying instead of left, right, right, like a dog or a wolf, you're saying that it had a left, right, left pattern.
Right, just like a human. It had a stride.
Ew. Did you ever come back after the fact, measure it with a ruler or a tape measure to see exactly how big those prints were?
Hey, I was 10 years old. I was too scared to go back there. I stayed away from that thing.
Good idea.
And I was only 10 years old. My buddy was 10 years old. And we knew something screwy going on. We stayed away from that area for a while. We went camping down there one time, and we were on a motorcycle, a Honda 90, a red Honda 90. It had a little luggage rack on the back. It took us 3 trips to take everything down there in those woods. We built a campfire, and we started hearing something real heavy moving around us, making noise. Well, it took us only 1 trip to bring everything back, and with me sitting on top of everything. We weren't taking any chances, we were gone. You know, we would go down there and play all day during the daytime where we could see everything, but ain't no way. I felt like something was watching me, but I couldn't get through those woods fast enough. Sometimes it would be nice in there, and everything would stop moving. Crickets would stop cricking, and it would be flat, dead. And I said, oh, here it comes. And the fear would just come out of me. You know, you could just boo when I my pants. Pardon my French. But that's why I avoid real thick areas that I can't move in. Or, you know, I'm aware of it. You know, even you go into parks and cities and stuff where there's a lot of thicket and stuff. I keep an eye out. I have to. It's not only for me, it's for, you know, if there's kids in there playing stuff, I'm looking out for the kids and stuff. Because if I spot some, I'm going to get the kids out of there. If they think I'm nuts or not, so be it. I don't know what these things' intent is. Maybe it's a good thing I did see this thing, because now I'm aware. Maybe I can help somebody else or save somebody else bacon. Like I said, I'm 60. If I got to go down, I'm going to go down like a good old Viking, sword in hand, because kids are precious to me. I don't have any of my own, but I love the little buggers. But I don't want to see anybody get hurt by these things. Ignorance will kill you. So maybe it's a good thing. That's how I look at it. But I'll never forget coming out of the woods on that motorcycle. 3 trips down, 1 trip back. That was pretty good. And I kept looking behind me as we're getting out of the woods I'm on that motorcycle. And the woods are called French's Woods. I don't know what it's like now. It's probably all grown up. But I think this thing was passing through. Sometimes it do. But it's just a scary thing. And then I just only recently started researching it, found that other people had the same thing, because when that happened to me, nobody knew what it was. There wasn't no internet. There's nobody talking about it. If you talk about it, you're a nut. You're a screwball. Even today, people think I'm crazy when I say something about it, so I keep my mouth shut. Because they don't understand what people don't understand. They don't want to understand. What people don't understand, they're afraid of. Well, I want to understand, so I'm not afraid anymore. But you have to be careful. Whoever's listening to this, you got to be careful. In the cities, out of the cities, you think humans are predators? These things make humans look like toys. You can take your worst nightmare and compound it 10 times, 100 times. These things make the worst bad guy look like a puppy. And they come in all different sizes and shapes. Some are smaller, some are bigger. I don't want to see the giant ones. But that's the way that works out. So I'm just kind of like laying back and trying to learn as much as I can now. But what else can I say? But if you see one, it's going to affect you for a long time. And the best thing you can do is find somebody to talk to about it. Otherwise, you're going to toss and turn like I did for 50 years. And that's no fun either, and you're going to hold that fear inside you. You're going to be scared to go out dark at night because you're kind of linked to them. And they're linked to you. I don't know what they do to you, but they do something to you. You know, some kind of link, some kind of fear. But when you realize you're not the top of the food chain, that's really sobering. Because you're not as great as you thought you were.
What do you think about the idea of running into a Bigfoot as compared to running into one of these things, Mark?
I'd rather run into a Bigfoot. I can deal with a Bigfoot. I can't deal with these things. These things are like a nightmare. A Bigfoot is basically, you know, to me, it's like they can do damage to you, but they'll throw rocks and stuff at you and chase you off, I guess. I don't know. I never met a Bigfoot. But I think these dogmen are more primeval. They come out of your nightmares. The thing, caveman stuff, when you huddle around your fires in prehistory, afraid of everything that moved in the dark. They just danced out of firelight. These things come right out of your nightmares, out of your fear. You know, it's like when a dog curls back its teeth and growls at you, a big dog. That sends willies down your back. Now you compound that with the dog man, he does that, he growls at you. It sends terror right down to your soul. You have no chance. It's like you're going to get it, and you don't know how you're going to get out of it. You have no hope, period. That's what it feels like to me. But a Bigfoot, you can get out of it. Because to me, a dog by himself is okay, but I don't feel they run by themselves. Dogs run in packs. Do these things run in packs? That's my question. I can deal with one. I can't deal with a pack. I'm an hors d'oeuvre. That's simple.
Because of how your encounter played out there, Mark, it does point to the fact that that dog man just had terrorizing you on its mind. It didn't want to actually hurt you. If it wanted to hurt you, it would have broken into that trailer like you mentioned and done whatever it wanted to do to you. I don't know why they get such a big kick out of terrorizing people, but it sure does seem like they do. When you're talking about your encounter, that reminded me of an encounter that I spoke with an eyewitness about from Alabama. When he was a kid in the early 70s, he was asleep back in his bedroom in this very rural area where his family lived. The window was open because it was a hot summer night. I think he had just fallen asleep when this thing reached through that window, right through that screen, grabbed him by the ankle and started pulling. Well, when he woke up and started thrashing, it let go. As soon as it let go, he jumped out of bed, ran up the hallway, and jumped in bed with his mom. I don't think his dad was home at the time. Now that dog man or Bigfoot, whatever it was, he had previously seen a dog man just outside of his house, so that's what I think it probably was. Either that same dog man coming back, or maybe another one that had been running with that previous one coming back to do that to him. But it's clear it had a hold of his ankle. He was a boy at the time. If it wanted to hurt him, it could have snatched him right out that window by his leg and had its way with him. But it didn't. It let go of his ankle after it had terrorized him and let him go. So that dog man must have had terrorizing him on its mind. Why they like to do that, I never will understand.
Well, maybe they have a very strong sadistic streak, or maybe they feed off of fear. That's a possibility too. Because you don't do something if you're not getting something out of it. That's how I look at it. These things are getting something out of scaring the hell out of kids. Kids are very emotional. They put off a lot of energy. So who knows? Or maybe they're just very sadistic creatures that like to terrorize. And they do it because they can get away with it. But it seems to me that they're very sneaky when they do it. They do it to people or kids and people that are in out-of-the-way places where nobody else sees them very much. So that's what I think. Who knows?
They are really good at what they do. There was another incident, actually there have been several incidents like this that I've been made aware of and spoken with eyewitnesses about. One boy was in his room late one night when all of a sudden he heard this sound at his window. Now mind you, he was in a second-story bedroom. He's in bed, hears this tapping on his window, goes over, parts the drapes, looks out. Here's this dog man that's clinging to the side of his wall, looking in, grimacing at him, kind of snarling without making any sound. That dog man could have easily broken through that glass and snatched that boy up, but it didn't. It seems like, just like with that Alabama incident, once the deed was done, that boy was scared within an inch of his life. The dog man was happy and left.
Like I said, maybe they feed off that fear. They get their jollies off. Who knows? I don't want to see him again. And next one that does it to me and when is going to get a face full of buckshot.
You just mentioned buckshot. That reminds me of an interesting tidbit about something you discovered after you had that encounter, and consequently after your dad passed away. You were going through his ammo, and you discovered something very interesting.
Right. When I said that, when I told my father what happened was he was down, he was from North Carolina, Rocky Mount, and he used to tell me a lot of ghost stories and werewolf stories when he was a kid. And he saw said he saw a lot of crazy stuff in Okefenokee Swamp. And he talked about werewolves and whatnot. And He passed away, and I was going through his things, and I came across a box of shotgun shells, and I said, these have wax on top of them. I wonder what the hell's inside of them. So I opened them up, and there was silver pellets in them. I thought, oh, what the heck is this? They're 12 gauge. And I dumped them out, and it looks like he had taken silver coin, taken heat to them, and melted them and dropped them into a pot of water, scooped them back up and put them in these shotgun shells and just put them away for safekeeping. Well, I never thought anything about it. I emptied out the shotgun shells. Now I'm thinking about it, well, maybe he knew something that I didn't, but he never really talked about it, because after I told him about my encounter, he didn't say anything to me, but it's like he looked at me, but he kind of like knew something, but I guess he didn't want to tell a 10-year-old kid anything about it at the time. But I found it very interesting, so to this day I have taken some silver myself and loaded up some shotgun shells, just in case. I'd rather have it and not need it than need it and not have it. That's how I feel. And I know sooner or later, possibility, I hope not, I may run across them again, but I'm not looking forward to it, and I'm not hoping for it. Because these things are kind of your worst nightmare. You know, you can sit there, you can laugh, you can sit in your room, and you can chuckle, you can do whatever you want to, but once you see one, you don't want to see one, if you get my drift.
You mentioned earlier in the interview that you're convinced that you're going to have another encounter, or at least you touched on that idea. I know from the pre-interview that you do, in fact, believe that at some point down the road you are going to run into another one. Let's talk about that a little bit, if you don't mind.
Well, I feel that the one that I saw took something from me, but I also feel that I'm linked to it somehow. I know it's there. It knows I'm there. That's why I stay out of the woods and stuff. That's why I'm trying to learn as much as I can. It's just, it's something you can't put your finger on, but you know. It's like, you know, when somebody's going to call you on the phone, they call you on the phone. It's just one of those feelings. You know they're there, and they know you're there. It's hard to put your finger on it. You know, it's like I'm not looking for it, but I'm preparing for it. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I think there's more to these things than meets the eye. I think they're just as smart as we are, and smarter in some other aspects. If the situation is right and everything falls into place, yeah, I will see another one. But I'm not going to be that scared little boy again. I'll be a scared man, but at least I'll have it under control and know what to do. I'll try to get out of the situation any way I can. Period. But now I'll be looking at it not as a dog man, not as a wolf man, but as a life form. That's how I'm going to try to look at it and get out of its way. Because they can be anywhere. You could be in a rural setting. You could be in a city. You could be anywhere. These things can be anywhere. They could be down the sewers. They could be down your wells. They could be down the subways, trains. You don't know. They're expanding. We're encroaching in their territory, so they're going to expand outward. They got to eat too. And they're just as curious about us as we are about them, I think. But they're more dangerous than we ever dreamed of. More dangerous than we are. And they're smarter too. That's how I feel about the whole thing. I don't want to be chasing them down. I want them to leave me alone. But I just have that feeling. It's a feeling. That's all I can tell you. It's a feeling. Right, wrong, or indifferent. It's more like a knowing, a feeling and a knowing.
A lot of people have the idea that a dogman encounter lasts for maybe 10 seconds, 30 seconds, maybe a minute at the most, but here we're talking about an incident that occurred over 50 years ago to you. We talked about how it still gets you so shook up to relive it. It's not a situation where you have it for 10 seconds or 30 seconds or whatever. A dogman encounter lasts a lifetime, unfortunately. Are you dealing with it any better now that we've gone over all the things that we've gone over?
Oh, I'm dealing with it 100% better now. Because I know I'm not the only one. Before, when in the 60s and the whatnot, before I started talking to you, I just went round and round in my head because everybody thought I was crazy. I had all these questions and no answers kept coming back. All I heard was, it was a werewolf. It was a werewolf. Well, if it was a werewolf, and how come? Well, I don't know. But now I'm starting to see that other people are having the same thing. And if I just see it, it's one thing. But when it starts repeating a pattern, it's something else. It's leaving tangible evidence. So it settles me. So if we can get together and start talking about it, because I think it leaves some kind of a stress syndrome. You have an internal stress about it because you're always uptight because you're afraid you're going to see it again. But once you find that other people have seen it and it comes out, then the stress lessens because you're not alone. For the fact that other people are going through it too. And you're not crazy.
Since our first conversation, Mark, there were a lot of things that really impressed me about you. One of the things that's impressed me the most is your concern for the safety and well-being of others. Several times in that conversation, just like several times in this interview tonight, you've mentioned concerns about the safety of others, looking out for kids who might run into these things and other types of situations where people might encounter them and get hurt. I can't tell you how impressed I am by that fact about you.
Well, I'm going to dig in as much as I can about these things and, find others that know about them, that know more than I do. And I'll face my fear and start sticking my heads on the wood with others to figure out what's going on and what exactly do they want or what they are, and learning more and more about them so others don't have to pay the price. I'll be going on 61. I got about 10 more years in me, so I'm not really too scared of if I'm going to go, I'm going to go. They can't do much more to me. They've already scared me witless since I was a kid. There's not much more they can do to me. But if I can enlighten other people as to what to do and what not to do, it's just like grizzly bears or wolves. If you know their habits, you can figure them out. If they're just as smart as you, or what what they can do and what they can't do, then you have at least something to build on. You have a database. But I don't want to see anybody get hurt. Like, if you explained to me once that people have been hurt by them. I don't want to see anybody, kids, people disappear from what I've been reading and from what I've been watching. People do disappear, so something's going on. Now, what if it's your brother, your little kids, your daughters? You're going to pay for that for the rest of your life. If you can stop that with just one person, and these things snatch them just for ha-has and did make them disappear, and you can stop it and make them disappear, it's all the better. Because you're helping them out, you're making people more aware to what's out there. People don't want to believe what they can't see, touch, and feel. And they see these pictures and stuff, say, aha, look about this, it's a real monster. And people hook up stuff all the time. They don't know what to believe. So it's better to be safe than sorry, even if you're unsure about something. Give it the benefit of the doubt. Don't just instantly discredit everything. Give it the benefit of the doubt. Just like dinosaurs are extinct. Well, in the 50s, they pulled a coelacanth. It's supposed to be extinct. Prehistoric fish. All right? Now they're talking about megalodons and everything. Who knows what's out there? We don't. Anything's possible. You don't know. So don't discredit anything. Say, well, it's possible. Even though I haven't seen it, it's possible. Just like quantum physics. They look at human beings like, we're solid. No, we're not. We're energy. Millions and millions of stars put together. We're energy. We're not solid. We're energy. On a quantum physics level, anything's possible. Start opening your minds and opening your eyes to what could be, the possibilities. That's all I have to say about it. And if I can help somebody else that's gone through this and talk to them, I feel better about it. I've done something. Instead of sitting there crying about it, I've done something and left somebody in a better space. That's how I feel about it. And put knowledge out to people. It's important that people know what these things are, because they see them, oh, I saw a dog man. Oh, you're nuts. Well, I see a dog man. He's 6 inches from my nose. Well, then it's too late. I believe you now. Well, too late. Or my kid got ripped up, or my dog got tore up. It's too late. Start opening your eyes and keep your eyes to your surroundings, not only for yourself, but for your kids and loved ones. You don't know what's out there. You could have a bear in town. You could have anything in town. Be aware. Most people lost the instincts to be aware of the surroundings. They're dead with their instincts. Take that extra minute to look around you and look. And at nighttime, look around you. Listen and look. If things are making noise around you at nighttime, cool. If they get real quiet, take a second look. Something's going on. That's all. But the most important thing, look out for each other. These dogmen ain't looking out for you, I'm telling you not much. And they're good at it. But I don't want to get chewed up. I don't want you to get chewed up. But don't go out in the woods looking for them by yourselves or with a group with a camera. You're asking for trouble. And you will find it eventually. And it's not the kind of trouble you want to find. Not with these things. If you want to talk about them, learn about them, go to somebody who knows about them and discuss it. Don't go out in those woods digging for them, because you might disappear. Oh, well, so-and-so disappeared. Or you might get chewed up. It's not the way to be.
Those are a lot of good words there, Mark. I hope that by coming out publicly tonight and revealing the details of that encounter you had, I hope that really helps you get over the effects you've had to deal with over the past 50 years. Hopefully, it's going to be a lot easier to think about and to deal with as a result. Having said that, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show tonight and doing that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Take care of yourself and care about the people around you. If there's anything to do for you in the future, let me know.
I really appreciate that. Thanks again.
You're welcome.
Have a good night.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye. If you've had a dogman encounter and you'd like to speak with me about it, whether in private or on the show, you can reach me at contact@dogmanencounters.com. I'd love to hear from you. Hi, everyone. Thanks for listening to another episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I'm Vic Cundiff, and I'll be your host for the show. Tonight's guest is Laura Love. Laura, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Laura, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
I live in Western Michigan, and I retired Sheriff's Department, former Navy, 51 years old. I guess that's really about the only thing I got to say about that.
Well, that's an interesting background to say the least. Because of your work history, did you hear about any dogman encounters in the area coming across the dispatcher's radio?
No, I've never actually heard that. We've had more UFO sightings, strange lights, maybe a Bigfoot sighting, but never anything dogman related.
Considering where you worked, the state of Michigan, it almost seems like you'd have at least some activity in your area, no matter where you're at. But I guess things like that are kind of kept on the down low, so maybe I shouldn't be all that surprised. When you were growing up, Laura, did you have an interest in Bigfoot and other types of things like that go bump in the night?
I've always had an interest in that kind of thing. The movies that I grew up watching in the late 70s and early 80s was, a prime time for the horror genre and, the ghosts, Frankenstein, the vampires, all the things that go bump in the night, the paranormal. That was something that was just coming into being interesting, and so everybody, I think, at that time had an interest in it. And, some people, I think, have maybe moved on from it, and other people have gotten deeper into it. If there's something odd on TV to watch, I'm probably going to be watching it because I find it more interesting than the news.
Yeah, I can understand that. Without getting into the actual details of your encounter yet, I want to ask you, having had your own dogman encounter, what do most people have wrong about what it's like to have an encounter like that?
What do they have wrong about it? I think that a lot of people may have seen things, especially in this area. It's a small community, and I think that when people encounter something that's out of the ordinary, they keep it to themselves because public opinion in a small community can, make or break people. There's some people that take a lot of stock in what others think, and then, of course, there's people that don't necessarily care what other people think. But I think that there may be encounters that have been experienced by others in this, general area, but they have never come forth because who wants to be labeled, crazy or hallucinating?
That does make good sense. It's one of those things where until you're placed in that position to have to consider your options on getting help for dealing with what you experienced, it's easy to overlook the problems that you would face if you did have an encounter like that.
I agree. I think that a lot of people will chalk it up to, well, that was weird, or I'm not going to tell anybody, and they put it behind them as quickly as possible and then try to get back on with their lives, the normal part of their lives. They don't want to deal with the abnormal or the unusual or the frightening aspects of it. They feel safer ignoring it and chalking it up to their imagination.
It's kind of a whole ostrich with its head in the sand philosophy is what you're getting at.
Yeah, I think so. Just my experience dealing with people in law enforcement, that was a lot of my experience with how people deal with things, even the bad things that come along in life that aren't unusual or paranormal. They are in denial. Some people, that's just how they deal with it. They deny that it happened, and they create the normal bumper around themselves for protection.
Everyone's got different coping mechanisms to try and help them through a situation like that. You can't say that one way is necessarily wrong or better than another way of trying to get through it. You just basically do the best you can to get over it and try to move on. Because of your background in law enforcement, you would know the answer to this question better than almost anyone. Let's say that, for whatever reason in your district, someone had an encounter with a dog man. From what you experienced, do you think that people in your department would try to cover it up, or do you think they'd be at least fairly transparent about the occurrence?
Well, I think it would depend on the individual that was responding to the complaint, to tell you the truth. It's very subjective. If you have somebody that doesn't take any stock in paranormal or unusual occurrences, they're going to rationalize the complaints that are assigned to them. And then you will have other officers that are maybe more open-minded or have had experiences themselves that will take it more seriously and maybe put more effort into the investigation of the complaint from the population. It's really just, it's all subjective. It's all subjective of the person who is in charge of that particular investigation.
It sounds like you didn't have any standing orders that were laid out in front of you beforehand, telling you, instructing you, if something like a Sasquatch encounter is reported, if something like a dogman encounter is reported, you are ordered to keep it hush-hush, do not share that info with the public.
We didn't have a standing order necessarily, but if you had a complaint, for example, let's just say that a complaint came in of a Bigfoot encounter, the officer would have to duly execute his responsibility of going out and checking into the encounter and try to find out what actually happened, whether or not it was somebody in a gorilla costume or if it was somebody in a big furry coat that may have been mistaken. They try to give it due diligence. I think that depending on who the officer was responding to that call, whether or not they would be able to say, you know, well, it's possibly a Bigfoot, or this is a load of malarkey, and I have to go out and show this person that they were seeing something that they thought they were seeing, but it wasn't really what they were seeing. They were seeing this instead. But we would not conduct interviews with, let's say, you know, news channels and things like that without everything going through the proper channels and then given the report from our higher ups that would say, okay, this is the information you may release, and this information is not allowed to be released. It was all case-by-case basis.
There is an idea out there that if you are in law enforcement or work for the government, if you come out and share that information publicly, there's this idea that you will lose your job. It's almost a foregone conclusion. From what you're saying, it sounds like that probably isn't the case, at least not in your situation it wouldn't have been.
Not in my community, but I guess if you were to, let's say, beat that drum rather loudly and long, they may call you into the office and have a discussion with you and say, you know, you are representing the sheriff's department or, you know, the police department or whatever agency you work for. And you have a responsibility of presenting a certain image. And if you walk around sounding like you've fallen off of the turnip wagon, then they may ask you to tone it down or not be so vocal about it. But we've never really had a situation like that. So I can't say for certain that that's what would happen, but that would be my best guess and how it would be handled.
That's pretty much what I would expect, so there's no surprise there. Well, let's get into the details of this encounter you had. Before you tell us about the actual encounter, Laura, please tell us about the area where this encounter happened.
The area's in western Michigan. It's lakeshore area. I guess it's the eastern lakeshore of Lake Michigan, but the western shoreline of the actual state. About halfway up south of Mason County. It's just a little agricultural area. We don't have any big cities. In fact, I think we have one stoplight, possibly two in the whole county. It's very rural, very laid back, not a lot going on here. We do have tourists that come here in the summer because we have sand dunes and Lake Michigan. But in the winter, it's basically just the farmers and their animals and the orchards around here. Yeah, lots of wood for hunters. There's a lot of hunters in this area that come here during deer hunting season. We do have a lot of deer in this area. It's a good area to raise a family, and it's a good area to snowmobile and snowshoe, ski, winter sports like that. There's a lot of trails and a lot of woods, a lot of open fields for riding snowmobiles and everything. It's a very fun family area.
Oh, it sure sounds like it. Sounds like a good place to live. Well, let's get into the details of this encounter you had. Please share every last detail that comes to mind, starting with why you were at the location of the encounter in the first place.
Okay, well, it was February of 2009. I had broken my arm, and I had to have my arm in a sling. It couldn't be casted because of the area of the break. My best friend would come up to my house and pick me up and take me down to Muskegon County, which was about 40 miles away from where I lived, so that I would have something to do. I was going to start grading mad, being locked in my house and not being able to drive or to do anything because of my injury. So she would come up very frequently, pick me up, take me down to Muskegon, and we would watch a movie, or we'd go hang out at her house, or we'd walk around the mall or something, just something to get me out of the house. On this one particular night, we were driving back from Muskegon. It was about 11:30, 12 o'clock at night. It wasn't snowing, but it was winter. The roads were snow-covered with patchy spots of pavement and compacted snow, so there was icy spots. It's very typical of Michigan winter. We were just talking, driving north on US 31. We had gotten into Oceana County from Muskegon County, and we were about in the Roxbury area on US 31. We were approaching an overpass. There was a truck in front of us, I would say probably about 5 or 6 car lengths ahead of us. We were making sure that we weren't too close to him in case, he had a nice patch and we, wanted to prevent an accident. From the left, we saw something moving. It was running very fast on 2 legs. It came from the left onto the road, and it hit the rear quarter panel of the small pickup truck in front of us, which caused the pickup truck to fishtail very wildly. Luckily, the driver of the truck was able to get his vehicle back under control. It continued to run towards the right. It did seem to acknowledge that we were even approaching it in a vehicle. It continued to run. It went down the ditch and then up the other side of it into the long, tall grass and the little brushy type of trees and all the undergrowth, and it disappeared. I don't know why it was there. I don't know where it was going. I don't know if it was being chased or if it intentionally approached the truck to do something. I have no idea what the agenda was of this particular entity, but it was going somewhere with purpose, and it seemed to be very intense. It was very shocking because it was so large. It was at least 7 feet tall. It was very muscular. The hair wasn't real long, but it wasn't a short coat either. Perhaps it was like the winter coat, or how animals will have a winter coat and a summer coat. It may have been a little longer for the season. I don't know really what type of genetics they have, if they even have winter coats, come to think of it, but it wasn't what I would call shaggy as much as hairy.
Did you get a fairly good look at its muzzle?
Yes, it was long. It was elongated from its face. It had kind of like, a collie, lassie type of nose where it came out very, very prominently and almost to like a pointy type of ending, not nice and rounded, but it was more angular. It had a big black nose that, it had the dog nostrils, the dog face. The profile was very classic canine. Pointed ears that stood on the top of its head more than towards the back of its head. They were forward more, and they were standing straight up. And then, of course, they had the mane around its neck and shoulders area, and it kind of wrapped around its shoulders onto its chest, where it seemed to just blend into the rest of the hair or fur that covered its body. And come to think of it, it didn't have the bare belly like most dogs would have. When a dog rolls over, you see the bare belly, and it was like it was totally fur covered over the front. It was one color, but it was, shades of that one color. It was, it wouldn't be like you took just a brown crayon and colored it. It had various shades of brown, darker brown. It was very consistent with a coat of fur that has all the colors that make it uniquely that one animal, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. As far as its eyes would go, it's dark out because of how late it was. Did you ever get a chance to see eye color from this thing?
No, we didn't get close enough to see eye color, but it appeared that the eyes were dark. Mostly a profile that we saw of this animal or creature. I don't recall seeing any white, like humans have the white of their eyes, and you can usually see that in profile, whereas an animal usually has just the one color of eye until you get really close and can see that they do have variations in color of the eye. But from where we were, it appeared that the face was completely dark. It didn't have its mouth gaping open like a dog might when it's running, where they have their tongue lolling out of its mouth. It had its mouth closed, and it didn't turn to look at us, but it was very distinctive in profile, a very angular face. You could see the ears, you could see the snout, you could see the outline of the coat that it was encompassed in. It had very long arms, but from the elbow area down to the fingers is where the arms were abnormally long. It seemed to be very muscular. The legs that it was running on, the hind legs, were shaped like a dog. If you were to stand a dog up to look at you, eye to eye, like a tall dog, the legs were like a canine, and it was moving really fast. It was running out, hit the truck, watched the truck fishtail, and the creature, whatever it was, continued on without even really breaking stride. It just didn't seem to affect the dog, wolf, dog, whatever it really truly was. It didn't seem to affect its speed or path. It kept on going. I looked over at my best friend who was driving, and I said, "Did you just see?" And she says to me, "Yes, I did." We were silent for the rest of the ride back to my house, which was about 10 minutes longer on the road. We pulled into my driveway. She turned off the car, and we sat there just staring out of the windshield, and she says, "Okay, what did you see? You tell me what you saw." So I told her what I saw, and she says, "That's exactly what I saw, but I wanted to hear you say it because I was too surprised, and I was sure that I was mistaken, but yes, that's exactly what I saw too." It was one of those nights that you don't think that you're going to remember, because it's just like, any other time you spend with your best friend, but it made it so that it was something that was going to stand out in my mind the rest of my life. It was completely incredible. Still to this day, I mean, that was in 2009, and it's 2016, 7 years later, almost to the same time of year, and I'm still absolutely awestruck at what I saw. It just happened so quickly that you think back on what you saw. And with the training that I had, I tried to make sure that I don't embellish what I saw. I try to pull the image up in my mind and give an accurate recount of what I saw and not embellish or assume that I saw something. Like, I do not recall seeing a tail. I would like to say I saw a tail, but in retrospect, I do not recall seeing a tail. But people would say, well, it's a canine, so it must have a tail, so their mind will create that tail. But to be honest and factual, I do not recall ever seeing a tail.
In the pre-interview, you mentioned that it had kind of strange-looking arms. What kind of details can you share with us about the arms that you saw?
The arms seem to be abnormally long. If you were to approach it as a human, where our elbow is, between the elbow and the shoulder, that seemed to be proportionately sized on the creature. But from the elbow to the fingertips, that's where it was very, very elongated, almost twice as long as it should have been. From the elbow to the fingertips, that's where it was longest. It seemed to be almost twice as long as it should be. And if you were to watch that animal with the long limbs on the front or the top, which I would call arms, if it was to be on all fours, it wouldn't look like a dog or a wolf because the arms would be too long. Whereas most dogs or wolves, their front and back legs are around the same length, I would imagine. But this would be very odd to my way of thinking if it was to go down on all fours because the front legs or the arms were so disproportionately long. Very muscular from the elbow up towards the shoulder, but from the elbow down, they were very lanky and lean and thin. It was oddly proportioned, and the hands or paws, whatever you want to call them, were long. It did not look like normal dog paws. If you were to stick your arm out in front of you and let your hand just hang from your arm, that was very much what I recall it looking like. When it was running across the road in front of us, the arms were pumping like a person would pump their arms when they're running, but it was in a more relaxed manner where we would have our arms up by our chest and maybe our hands slightly fisted and pumping our arms back and forth while we run. This was more relaxed and down by the waist area, lower stomach area, and the hands were very lax. The hands weren't fisted like a human would do. The hands were very fluid, is the only way I can really describe it.
If you had to guess, how much do you think this thing weighed?
I would say an easy 350, 400 pounds, easily. It was 7 feet tall. It seemed very muscular, but not fat. It seemed to be purely muscle. I would say an easy 400 pounds. It just seemed to be very solid, very much a bulk that meant business. It was a big guy. I called the guy, I think it was male. I can't say that it was male or female, but in my mind, it was a male. But if I had to give it my best guess, I would say 350, 400 very easily. It's hard to determine a creature like that because I really don't know what the normal weight is of a large canine type of animal or wolf. But, yeah, 400 pounds would probably be a safe guess.
Well, that definitely sounds like something you wouldn't want to run into on a lonely Michigan road, or I guess I should more accurately say that's not something you would want to have run into you on a lonely Michigan road.
Well, that was what my best friend and I were discussing. If we had left 30 seconds earlier from wherever we were, that could have been us that it hit. And she drives a Subaru. So if it had hit the Subaru, would it have done some damage? Would we have spun out? Would we have ended up in the ditch? alone or with it? What would it have done had that happened? After an encounter like that, your mind begins to ask a lot of what-if questions. And frankly, since I've seen it, I've thought about it a lot, and I would really love to have some more answers, because this is something you see and then it's gone, and you don't know if you're the only one that's seen it, because people aren't going to just come forth and say, oh yeah, I saw, a dog man the other day, because, society can be rather cruel. So people, I think, keep the encounters that they have to themselves instead of sharing the information. Everybody's basically left with their individual encounters and trying to figure out what happened and why it happened, or is there more? Or is that part of a pack? Do they live in packs, or are they solitary creatures? It's just, there's so many questions out there that haven't been answered, that anybody that's had an encounter, I sure would love to know the answers to that.
There are a lot of things about them that we just don't know. We'll probably never know, but I guess that it all just adds to the mystery.
It does. It really does. It enhances it, and it makes you think about it a lot. I know it has made me think about it a lot anyhow. It was in the area that I live in, so, naturally, when you're outside at night, in the summer, in the winter, if you hear a dog barking in the distance, or maybe a coyote or something, you wonder, are they communicating with each other? Do they know that they're out there, or are they prey for these things? It can be rather frightening sometimes to consider the possibilities and the ramifications of something like that being in your area where you sleep at night, and your children play outside. And are you safe in your home? Do these things have an agenda, or are they just trying to exist without being bothered by humans? I would love to know the answers to that, and I'm afraid that I may spend the rest of my life always wondering about that.
Oh, it definitely changes things. Once you know they're out there, life will never be the same again. Bouncing back to what you just mentioned about all the thought you've put into this whole dogman phenomenon, here's one aspect of that encounter you had you might not have thought about. Do you think that dogman hit that truck on purpose, or do you think it was an accident?
I don't think it was an accident, because when it hit the truck, it didn't really seem to break its stride at all. Had it been an accident, I think that it would have reacted differently to the impact. I'm not sure why it would hit the truck intentionally, but it didn't appear to be an accident, in my opinion.
I'd be very surprised if it had been an accident. When you think about how keen their senses seem to be, for it to not know that truck was there, or for it not to know that that truck was going to be there, that's awfully hard to believe. It sounds to me like it did intend to do that, just like what you just mentioned.
The curious thing would be why it intended to hit that truck. Did the truck perhaps have an encounter with it prior to that, and it laying in wait for this truck? Does this truck drive through there every night at the same time because, he's driving home or to work or something? It makes you wonder, why would it intentionally hit that truck and continue on its path? And the truck didn't stop. The truck never really slowed down. It got itself back under control and then kept on going. If I had been hit by something, I think my way of thinking is I would have stopped to make sure that whatever I hit or hit me was going to be okay. That's the type of person I am. If I have a collision with an animal, I would stop, and, if the animal can be helped, then, get help for the animal. If the animal can't be helped, I, put it out of its suffering. It's not something that you just leave there to suffer. So a lot of questions come to mind when I think about that night.
As far as the whole stopping idea goes, maybe that old boy did get a glance at that creepy thing in the rear view and that's why he didn't stop. If he did see it, I can't blame him for not hitting the brakes.
Right. I have to agree with that 100%.
Yeah, I don't brake for Dogman either, so if any Dogmen are listening to this show, please stay out of the way of my car or truck, because I'm not going to hit the brakes.
Yeah, we need to get a bumper sticker, "Will not stop for Dogman."
Yeah, I'll bet it would be a good seller, especially up there in Michigan. As far as Michigan goes, did you know that you were roughly 50 miles, only 50 miles as a crow flies, from a place called Reed City, Michigan, which is, in a large way, a mecca for Dogman encounters?
I know of Reed City, but I did not know that was a mecca for Dogman encounters.
It sure is. Yeah, there are a load of encounters that have been reported from that area and continue to be reported from that area. In fact, there's a Dogman researcher, a really good guy named David Kyleman, who lives in that area. That's where he had his encounter.
Wow, that's very surprising. It makes me wonder if the one that we saw is from that area and they're moving to the west, or if this is a completely different set of Dogmen.
Well, as you know, since Reed City's roughly 50 miles away, for a big animal like that, that wouldn't be anything for it to move from that area where Reed City is over to where you're talking about. I doubt highly that it's the same one that he saw. There are so many Dogmen in that area, I'm convinced of that fact. I'm sure it's not the same one, but if one in that area, in the Reed City area, wanted to come down and pay your area a visit, I'm sure that's just one day's travel for it, so shouldn't be a problem.
Well, it's known that wolf packs, when they hunt, they have like a 200-mile radius area that they hunt in, and they try to stay out of each other's hunting grounds. So that would be very feasible that Reed City would maybe encompass this area as a hunting ground for them.
Yeah, that does make good sense. I'm sure they do have a very large hunting area that they roam in, so I wouldn't be surprised if they did go at least that far.
Right, well, it's almost to the lakeshore, so it would be Reed City to Lake Michigan, and who's to say that it doesn't go the other way and hit the next body of water, because Michigan is surrounded by water on all sides except for the southern part, so maybe it's its hunting ground or its pack's hunting ground. That would be very believable.
Have you heard about any other Dogman encounters since you had yours that night?
Not locally, but after my encounter, I did start doing some research online to see if there were any close by, and either people are keeping it to themselves or they just haven't found, or I haven't found perhaps, where they've posted their sightings. But there have been some sightings to the north of me, about 2 counties north, which would be about 50 miles or so, I would imagine. Manistee, Lake counties, they've been sighted up in that area, which is actually even more rural and more wooded, so they would have many more places to hide or to burrow down into and be undisturbed. The further south you go from Oceana County, it becomes more cities, more towns, more people living in, bigger communities. But from my area north, it does become much more wild, I guess, more woods. Houses are farther apart because everybody has big farms, and so your closest neighbor could be a mile down the road. So I imagine that they find the expanse of trees and fields to be a good area to maybe do their hunting or traveling, because it's not as heavily populated as it would be farther south.
That would be perfect habitat for them, so it would only make sense that they'd have a pretty healthy population in areas like that. Well, let's transition into talking about the after effects. Besides your friend sitting next to you when you had that encounter, who was the first person you shared that encounter with after you got back?
That would be my oldest son. I told him. he reacted, "You're kidding me, that's cool." And then I believe I told my younger son, and he was kind of like, "Huh, really? Wow." They totally believed it, and I don't think that they necessarily want to have their own encounters, but they totally know that there's things out there that we can't explain, and I guess they think it's pretty neat that Mom had an encounter and lived to tell the tale.
Well, I don't think they would have thought it was all that neat if they had been in that car with you that night and had a chance to see that for themselves, but having not seen that, I can understand them thinking that.
Yeah, it was absolutely incredible. I'll never forget it. I'm sure that when I'm, 100 years old and have Alzheimer's, this will be one of those things that I'll never forget.
Oh, that I'm sure of. I've got no doubts about that whatsoever. What kind of changes, now that you know they're out there and now that you've seen one for yourself the way you did, what kind of changes have you made in your life?
I pay attention more to what goes on around me than I used to, I believe, because you never know when you're out in the woods walking what may be out there watching you walk through the woods. I do not go anywhere without some sort of protection because I know that I am not going to be any match physically or even with agility for one of these animals or creatures. Whatever category they happen to fall in, I'm going to be the loser in an encounter if it was ever nose to nose. I just try to make sure that where I go, I know what's going on around me, and if I feel like something is maybe there, I find myself going back to my vehicle and moving on down the road.
Can you function the way you used to before you had that encounter? In other words, can you take the trash out at night? Can you go out to the car when it's parked outside at night and not have too many problems?
I don't want to let this define me as a person and make me afraid. I do take the trash out at night, and I do, go out to my vehicle. But when I do that, I do it with a lot more awareness of what's going on around me. I listen for animal noises or brush rustling. I'm much more tuned into perhaps what's going on around me than I was before, where I would just maybe run out and have my headset on or something, listening to music. Now I will leave the headset in the house and go outside, so I am aware of if there's something that I need to be careful of or perhaps be aware of that is out there. I don't let my dogs out overnight anymore, though. They come in the house. They stay in the house with me. I don't know if it's more for their protection or mine. I feel better about having them near me, though.
No, that's understandable there. I don't think anyone could blame you. Did this cause you to fervently research the Dogman topic after you had that encounter, or did you kind of ease into that research that you mentioned?
No, I started researching it. In fact, I have tossed around the idea of maybe writing a book so that way if somebody else has had an encounter that they may have a place to go to get some answers. I'm nowhere near done researching it, but yeah, I am absolutely researching it, the legends, the lore, the Indian aspect of it, the paranormal and supernatural aspects of it. It's an ongoing researching project for myself because I want answers, and if I want answers and someone else has had an encounter, I can't imagine that they wouldn't want answers as well.
Yeah, we are really hungry for answers still because there's so many questions that, like I mentioned earlier, we just don't know the answers to. It'll be great to have you on board finding some of those answers out, so that's good news. We can't get too much help on this topic.
It definitely needs to be researched, and they need to be able to obtain the answers because they're here, they are among us, and who knows if they are breeding prolifically and their numbers are increasing, are they going to become a threat to mankind at some point in the future? So to me, knowledge is power, and power that you can use to protect yourself and your loved ones, I think, is very vital to have access to.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Knowledge is definitely power.
Why did it hit the back of that truck? Because it did seem to be intentional. However, it wasn't an attack to be fatal, almost like an attack to say, hey, I'm here, I'm aware of you, maybe like a warning perhaps, but I don't know. It was very bizarre to see that animal creature come out and actually hit that truck. The truck definitely was impacted because it began to fishtail. So why? Why did it do that? That's been like the burning question. Why did it do that, and for what purpose? Do they have intelligent thought processes like a human, or are they more animalistic? It's absolutely fascinating. It's frightening, yes, but it's absolutely fascinating because no one knows what really drives them to do what they do.
They do so many things that are so hard to explain. Well, having said that, Laura, do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
If anybody else has had an encounter, I highly, highly recommend sharing it because it does help to talk to somebody about it. And the more information that we have out there for everybody to be able to access, the more understanding that we may have of these creatures and what their agenda is, if they're trying to just exist or if they have some other nefarious purpose going on. And to also document the locations that they're encountered in, because there may be more of them out there than we know. It may be a large population, and if that's the case, people have got to protect themselves. Mankind has got to know what it's up against sometimes and what the best course of action is. Don't be afraid to share it with people that will understand.
Those are all very good words. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on the show tonight, Laura. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to listen to my story, and I enjoyed it, and I really love listening to the stories that people call in and share, so I'll be looking forward to the new encounters that you come across, and I'll be listening rapidly from my little corner of Dogman area here.
Well, that sounds good to me. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate it. It's been great talking with you. I hope you have a great night.
I enjoyed it too very much. Thank you, Vic, and you have a golden day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. If you've had a Dogman encounter and you'd like to speak with me about it, whether in private or on the show, you can reach me at contact@dogmanencounters.com. I'd love to hear from you.